Greetings viewers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to talk about something that I get a ton of questions on. It's probably one of the top two most asked topics that I get questioned about, and that is Subaru timing belt kits. People wanting to know where I get my timing belt kits, what components I use, what brands I use, when to change them, all that good stuff. So we're going to get into that today. As I've stated in other Subaru timing belt videos I've probably done 3 or 4, maybe 5 timing belt videos at this point on Subaru vehicles. And I, in those videos as well as now, recommend anyone wanting to know what brand of timing belt kit to buy, I only recommend Aisin. Aisin is the only timing belt kit that I use. Subaru does not sell a timing belt kit from the dealership, from the parts department. You have to buy each component individually. They get expensive, especially when you're buying the water pump, all of your idlers, the tensioner, and the timing belt. That stuff can get $500–600 or more depending on your dealership and their markup on the parts. So buying a pre-made kit is the most cost-effective way to go. These Aisin kits are all listed in the Amazon storefront in the description below for all of your Subaru timing needs. Aisin makes a kit basically for every single Subaru engine. All the EJ series engines, 20, 22, 25. I don't think they have a kit for the EG33. I think you still have to piece that together. And there is an issue with kits for some of the Forester models. It's a little bit hard to find because some Foresters had an oil cooler, some did not, and the difference in the kits comes down to the water pump. Subaru water pumps are basically all the same, how they bolt onto the EJ block, but they have different fittings near the thermostat housing, depending on if they have an oil cooler or if they don't, or if they have a turbocharger. So that and the orientation of the thermostat, that's another differentiating factor. Some of them have the thermostat on the front face of the water pump on the same plane as the pulley. Some have the thermostat directly underneath of the water pump, pointing down towards the ground when attached to the engine. So the water pump, like I said, is the main difference. Most every single overhead cam Subaru uses the same belt, same idler, same tensioner. It's basically the water pump that's the varying factor. But as you see, I've installed plenty of these Aisin kits. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 here that I've replaced, I think, just this year. So I do believe in the product, and there's a reason why. If you look in the Aisin kits, every single thing in the Aisin kit is Subaru original equipment, less the water pump. But I've never seen an issue with an Aisin water pump. Aisin, as far as my research has come up, is the OE water pump provider for Honda and Toyota. So there's no issue using an Aisin water pump compared to using a Subaru or Fuji water pump on the older Subarus, and a Yamada, which Subaru went to in the later series EJ engines in place of it. Other than that, as I said, all the components are factory original. They're just not packaged as such. I do have some original Subaru packaging for timing components, and I also have all these old kits. So we'll get the camera back down here on the toolbox and go over some of the differences. Well, I say differences. The only difference is honestly in the packaging, because all the components are the same. Another quick thing on timing belt service, it's recommended about 90,000 miles on the EJ series engines to replace your timing belt, all components, and the water pump. Your water pump is a preventative maintenance thing on EJs. Rarely do they fail. You can normally get 2 or 3 timing belts out of a water pump without issue, as long as you service your cooling system and change your coolant as prescribed. The issue with the water pumps comes down to people neglecting their cooling system and not replacing their coolant at the given interval, and the corrosion, anti-corrosion properties of the coolant wearing out and subsequently rusting the inside of the cooling system and damaging the bearings and the seal for the water pump, normally what causes destruction of it. Other than that, they normally don't give much issue. They're pretty well built and engineered. The main thing that fails when you don't service your timing set on your Subaru, 99% of the time what I see is the cogged pulley. I'll have a picture up on the screen we'll look at in a minute. But this cogged pulley is the one that bolts onto the water pump housing. It's closest to the water pump pulley. And every time I see a failure with a timing belt on a Subaru, it is always that cogged pulley, normally due to the bearings locking up in it, due to them eventually running dry of oil. They are a sealed bearing. You cannot service them. You cannot re-grease them, repack them, or anything like that. Technically, you can't, but there are workarounds where if you had like a needle grease gun, you can inject it. But it's not worth messing with trying to service it rather than replace it for the cost. So that's the main thing I see fail. Timing belts do break, but normally that cogged pulley blows apart or seizes up before the belt actually breaks. So that's why you want to replace your idlers. The tensioners have issue sometimes with the hydraulics going out on them, but that's normally because people don't replace them at the 90,000 mark. I say 90, but 80 to 100,000 miles is technically the good range you want to be in. You don't want to go past 100,000 miles on a timing set for a Subaru. If you do, I've seen a lot of people that just put a belt on only and retain the water pump and the pulley and the tensioner, and that's no good because, like I said, the main things that fail are those tensioners and those pulleys, especially with age. Rarely is it the belt that fails first. So, always service it as a complete kit. Aisin makes that an easy service, or at least an easy parts grab to take to somebody and have service for you if you aren't comfortable doing the service yourself. Other than that, what can we talk about these kits before we get down here and actually look at the components? Nothing is really coming to mind. If it comes to mind, I'll put it in a minute. So let's bring the camera down here and actually look at all the individual components of the timing set. All right, we're going to take a look at a TKF 006. This is the most common kit I install. This kit basically is for the single overhead cam 2.5. So EJ251, EJ253. Again, the variations in the kit come down to the water pump and how many outlets and the location of the thermostat. So if you open the kit up, you'll see all the components are packaged just like this. So this is the big secret on Subaru genuine components. All of the Subaru genuine components are NSK Japanese bearings, Koyo Japanese bearings, and NTN Japanese bearings. Everything you buy from the Subaru dealership comes in this exact same box. It's just plain white and says Subaru and has a Subaru part number on it. That is the only difference when buying from the dealership compared to buying one of these Aisin kits. As you see, all of them made in Japan. Made in Japan. It's all stamped on the pulleys as well. And here we have our Yamada water pump. As you see here, Yamada, but we also see up here Japan and the stamp of Fuji Heavy Industries, which was the parent company of Subaru before they became the Subaru Corporation a few years ago. So this is what I'm talking about on the water pumps. As you see, there's a boss here for a, there's a water pipe here. There's also a boss here where a water pipe could be, and there's also a boss here where a water pipe could be. Some have one, some have two, some have all three. And we see here our thermostat is located in the same plane on the front of the water pump with the thermostat housing coming off. Some of them will have the thermostat down here with the thermostat housing coming off the bottom of the pump rather than the front of the pump. So, big difference. So to the water pump gasket, these are a single layer steel gasket with a rolled lip in them. You do not have to put any sealant, RTV, anything like that on these gaskets. Do not put anything like that on these gaskets. You put them on dry. You put them straight on a clean engine block and the back of the clean water pump and torque them to specification and you're good. Do not, again, put RTV, silicone, any kind of sealant on that gasket. So here is one of our pulleys here. As you can see, Koyo, Japan. I'll get a factory Subaru kit up in a minute and I'll show you that. Like I said, it's the exact same components, exact same Koyo bearings, exact same NSK bearings, exact same NTN bearings. Here is the upper idler pulley. As you see there, Japan NSK. Quality Japanese bearing. And the Koyo, this is the one I said fails. When you see a failure, it's this bad boy right here. It's this cogged pulley. This cogged pulley bolts on right here on that flange on the water pump. That's where it bolts on. And that's the one that always fails every time I see a failure. Actually, that's an NSK. So there's that one. And then to the hydraulic belt tensioner. Older EJs had a different tensioner than this. This is the most modern, latest design of belt tensioner for the EJs. As you see, NTN Japan on the actual tensioner pulley, whereas the body usually will say Fuji stamp or a Japan stamp, but I'm not seeing one on this one. Doesn't mean it's not genuine. Just sometimes they weren't all stamped Fuji Japan. But here's the issue with these. It's a preloaded hydraulic constant tension tensioner, and there's a little bit of oil leakage up here, but not a lot. But that's where you normally see the problem is these will be sopping wet with oil where the seal will bust and it will no longer hold the hydraulic pressure on this arm that tensions the belt, and you will have belt slap or you will jump timing. So, oh, I forgot my grenade pin in here. Add that to the collection. And they come with a nice set of instructions in every Ison kit. This one says 2.5 Forester, Impreza, Outback Sport. So, very well thought out directions with torque specifications. Now, here we have a TKF 005, which is for Legacy GT, Impreza GT Turbo, which would be WRX, and Forester XT. Essentially all the exact same kit, same water pump, tensioners and all. Well, the water pump will be a little bit different again due to where the pipe, water pipe comes out. As you see on the turbo car, there are two outlets. Also has a front-facing thermostat. Here's a good example of a tensioner that's on its way out. As you can see, if it'll focus, brighten it up a little bit for you. See all that oil that's been leaking out around that seal? This tensioner was getting ready to fail. It was probably already getting loose and letting the belt jump as the tensioner was losing its ability to hydraulically tension. So that's one thing you want to check for, but like I said, there's not really any reason to check them, just replace them. Anytime you're in there to service the timing belt, one and done, everything at the same time. So if you're ever wanting to check your Subaru timing belt, inspect it. You bought the car, you don't know when it was serviced last or if it has been serviced. Normally you can take the timing covers off and look at the belt. If it has an original genuine belt on it, if you can't read anything on the belt, if the belt is completely black, it's time to change it. The text on the belt is designed to last about 80 to 90,000 miles before it completely wears off. So if you still see white writing on the timing belt, if you can read Subaru, if you can read the part number, likely it has been replaced recently. Again, general rule of thumb, that's not something you can take to the bank. It's not an exact unit of measure, but if you can see the writing, it's normally a newer belt. If you can't read the writing, it's probably time to go ahead and get ready to replace it, because it's probably over 80,000 miles on the vehicle. Also, you want to check for any spiderweb cracking or any fractures or any dry rot in your belt as well. These tiger stripes in this timing belt, that's a good wear indicator for the age. Like I said, you want to look for any chafing in the belt, any kind of dry rot, any kind of cracking. Not going to be easy to show you without getting the macro lens out. Also look for any fluid contamination if the belt's got oil on it, grease on it, anything of that nature. But here's what I was talking about a second ago. This is that extra idler pulley that the double overhead cam or dual overhead cam turbo cars usually have. It's this tiny little idler pulley here. It is an NTN bearing, and it goes between the tensioner and the left intake camshaft pulley. So that's something you'll see on the turbocharged dual overhead cam engines. So if you go to the Subaru dealership and buy all of your individual components, this is what you'll get. Plain little white boxes with a Subaru sticker and part number on them. You open them up, it's the exact same NSK bearings, it's the exact same Koyo bearings, it's the exact same NTN tensioner, it's the exact same everything that you get in the Ison kit, side for the water pump. Here's what I was talking about before. You see, this one is actually stamped Fuji Heavy Industries Japan, and then stamped NTN down here, as well as NTN Japan on the idler or the tensioner pulley itself. But as you see, it just comes in a plain brown cardboard box rather than coming in the NTN box like comes with the Ison kits. Then with your water pump, you get the genuine Subaru water pump plain cardboard box with the, again, stamped Fuji Japan water pump, and this one having the 3 outlets, also water pump thermostat on the front of the water pump. So you can spend all the extra money to get these brown and white boxes with Subaru stickers on them, or you can save about 50% and get an Ison kit with all the exact same components, less the water pump, and you know, save yourself some money, save yourself some time, purchasing one item with everything in it rather than having to buy all the individual components and making sure you've got everything. So real quick, we did talk about difference in tensioners for the timing belt. The ones I've been showing you, that's the Gen 2 late model version, the last version they had. But on the very first EJ25Ds and the older EJ22s, this was the timing belt tensioner. It was a 2-piece tensioner, and you can put this on in place of the new tensioner. It had 2 bolts here, it had a hydraulic piston pushing this way, and then over here, which I cannot find right now, was the actual tensioner pulley, which was a large pulley on a pivot that this ram pushed into to tension the belt. A lot of people think that this tensioner is a lot better than the new style. They actually like it a lot better. It's less prone to failure. A lot of people that build high horsepower WRX STI engines, they run this old tensioner on them rather than the new swing arm tensioner. So it's not that it's you know, outdated or outdone, but just something to note. You guys that still have older EJ22s and first generation EJ25Ds, you might still see this tensioner when you go to service your belt. But as you see, maybe there's the Fuji Japan logo cast right there, but also on the back we've got the Ison logo right here. So I'm not sure if Ison was the original manufacturer for this, or if it was Fuji, or if this is a reman tensioner that Ison stamped before they put in the Ison box and sold. So not exactly sure on that one, but just wanted to show you the other version of EJ belt tensioner. Also believe the EG33s use this tensioning system. All right guys, that'll do it for the day's video on these Aisin timing belt kits. Again, I know a lot of people ask about it, so that's why I covered the topic. Links in the description for the Amazon storefront where you can get your Aisin timing belt kits for your Subaru, for your EJ engine, and that'll basically do it. We did talk a little bit about service intervals and the components of it, but I think we'll do another video focusing mainly on that. But that said, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.